Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. We are happy to be back with Barbara Greene, our certified orofacial myofunctional therapist, joining us today here live on Zoom and the podcast. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
Great to see you back here helping so many. Just give us a little overview of what tongue thrust is all about.
Well, myofunctional therapy is also known as tongue thrust therapy. It's also known as orofacial myofunctional therapy or orofacial myology. So there's different names depending on who's trained them and what organizations they belong to. But the main organizations are the AOMT and the IAOM. So people can look those organizations up online and find they have a directory of people that they can look for. I'm on there, so hopefully they would find me. So myofunctional therapy retrains the muscles of the mouth and face and of the body, in that we work on head, neck, body posture. We also work on eating and drinking, how they swallow, where their tongue is at rest, what their tongue does when they're talking, and all sorts of things when they're sleeping. So today we're going to feature a talk about children. So we're going to have a slideshow as part of that. And so let's get that working.
Beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. And don't forget the website. Visit our friend Barbara Greene, our certified orofacial myofunctional therapist, tonguethrust.com. Let's begin.
All right, so here I am, and this is how to contact me, Barbara at tonguethrust.com, or my website, www.tonguethrust.com, or my phone number, 805-452-4302. So today we're going to be talking about children. And where does this all start? Primarily, it starts at birth. And birth trauma is very prevalent. I had a very, very serious history of birth trauma. And as a result of birth trauma, this little girl was oxygen deprived. She was on her way out of the canal and the doctor wasn't there yet. And he told them to push her back in. And so they did. And by the time he got there, unfortunately, she was born with oxygen deprivation. And so her whole life was different. And notice the size of her tongue and the fact that she's already a mouth breather, the fact that she already is sucking fingers. So all of these things are absolute earmarks to knowing that your child has a problem. The other problem with babies is often whether or not they have a frenum issue. So a frenum is a muscle that attaches the tongue to the floor of the mouth. Otherwise, your tongue could flip back and you could swallow your tongue, but not when you have the frenum. So the frenum is a very important muscle. But if it's too short or too tight, then it causes problems. This baby was having feeding issues. She was having difficulty nursing. And if you look at her tongue, notice how it's dipped in the center and the sides of her tongue are flaring up. And when she tries to lift her tongue, it just won't go up as high as it needs to. It should look like this. And one day after surgery, to free up that muscle, this is what her tongue looked like. And this is what a baby's tongue should look like if they're nursing properly. So the back of the tongue elevates to rake the breast across the top of the mouth, and that is proper nursing. The tip of the tongue is actually down and protects the breast from the pad of the lower arch bone. So this baby went from totally a non-nurser having major difficulties, and in one day was nursing correctly. So bottle feeding can cause a training of the tongue working the wrong way also. So if a baby is sucking on a normal type of nipple that we see in the stores, then the tongue is being held down. And so they're learning to drink with the tongue being down and forward, down and forward. And then there are birth syndromes like Down syndrome that often have a mouth breathing and major tongue issue. So the other thing that we often see in children, as well as adults, but in children, is a sucking habit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at this, notice how the thumb is pushing the tongue down. And so the only way that the tongue can work is to be down and forward, down and forward. And so the whole time that they're sucking, they are teaching their muscles to be incorrect.
Okay.
And excuse me, we have thumb sucking, but we also can have one finger sucking, two finger sucking. Here's someone that she's sucking her finger, but then she has her other finger on top of the finger. And so it's too much pressure on the tongue itself. So we also see problems that develop along with all of this of mouth breathing. And
Mm-hmm.
mouth breathing is a very bad habit. The nose is on your face for a reason. It's there for breathing. And our mouth is not designed for breathing. So when you're breathing through your mouth, you're drying out the mouth. The mouth
Okay.
should always be very, and when you're breathing through your mouth, you're also, the whole face, the musculature is being pulled downward. So you can see that they develop a very long looking face and a more of a flat nasal area where normally it should be kind of cheeky up in this area. And so they develop the long flat faces. And you can't breathe through your mouth with your tongue where it's supposed to be
Okay.
against the top of your mouth. So the whole tongue is trained down and forward and often sideways as well. And
Hmm.
it shapes the lips. Often the lower lip gets much fuller. Here, the upper lip is even full. Sometimes the upper lip becomes much thinner than it should be when they are mouth breathing. And here's someone that obviously the tongue is very forward,
Mm-hmm.
anytime that he's at rest. Now, in an adult, does it go away? No. Unfortunately, it becomes their habit. So they continue to be a mouth breather. And now, because they lick their lips a lot, now she actually has a scar or
Mm-hmm.
tissue all around her lips. And does it go away? No. Here's an adult male who is still a tongue thruster, still a mouth breather. They gather a lot of saliva around their mouth, and often they drool. They actually drool. And so babies will drool. Yes, babies tend to drool, but not like when they're a mouth breather or have a frenum issue. Then they drool all the time. So it's a part of their history that comes along with them. So the other thing that happens is that they develop a very poor and narrow arch and palate. And so if you're looking at normal, this is what a normal mouth should look like. It should be nice and wide, and all the teeth are fitting very nicely in the mouth. But
Yeah.
here you see a very narrow arch and a
Okay.
high arch also. Like we call it a vaulted arch because it goes up so high. And now, guess what? Just like this mouth with a vaulted arch, they don't have room enough for their tongue.
Oh,
So they develop a low and sideways
yeah.
tongue posture because there's not room for the tongue to fit in their
Okay.
mouth. So that's why a thumb or finger sucker is so uh, difficult because it narrows the arch as well as the arch going up higher, as well as training the tongue to go down and forward. And
Wow.
does it go away? No, because here's an older child who has a relatively narrow palate and now has an open bite. So even if you do orthodontics, the orthodontics can fail if they continue to have what we call a tongue thrust. So
Oh,
here are examples of a tongue thrust. So here the tongue during the swallow is forcing itself totally against the teeth, and even the bite in the back is open. Here's a one-sided swallow.
oh,
So the whole force of the tongue is coming sideways into the bite, and the second teeth are not erupting. They're
hmm.
being pushed down into and held up into the jaw because the tongue is very powerful. Every time you swallow, it exerts anywhere from 15 to 18 pounds of pressure.
Wow.
So that's a lot of pressure. And if the tongue is at rest in this position also, then the teeth can't erupt. And it doesn't even matter if you do orthodontics, it's going to open up the bite again. So here's another type of tongue thrust where the pressure is different, but you still have sideways pressure,
Okay.
still have pressure against the upper anterior teeth. And here's a patient that I've seen just recently. He's 17 when I saw him. And look at his bite. His tongue is massive and his bite is non existent. The only teeth that occasionally touch are way back here on the back left side. The right side doesn't touch at
Okay.
all. And in fact, it's in crossbite. The upper teeth are inside the lower teeth. And he was never told he had a tongue thrust. And
Ooh.
guess what he has? He has a frenum attachment that's only that big, up
Okay.
to be this big. We
Mm-hmm.
open our mouth and lift up our tongue with the mouth wide open. And he can't even lift up his tongue if you ask him to. So it's a very sad situation because his parents were devoted to his dental health and took him to their dentist every 6 months. And nobody told him that he had a tight lingual frenum and that surgery should be done. So again,
Wow.
there's absolutely no way to correct his bite without lingual frenum surgery, myofunctional therapy. He's one of the most difficult patients I've ever had because
Yeah.
the tongue has no programming to go up. It's been down his whole life. So
Wow.
we're having to do massive amounts of exercise.
Yeah. My goodness.
And then, of course, we're trying to get his tongue to work right. And he
Okay.
has teeth meeting. So now he's in braces, and the orthodontist has expanded his arch so that that one side isn't in crossbite. And now he's trying to get the teeth to come together. But it's a very difficult case. And poor posture is so much a problem with people who have a tongue thrust. And
Wow.
so there's a child with a mouth breathing habit. Notice the flat face. And many times their nose and chin relationship isn't correct. Her lower jaw should be almost out to the point of her nose. So her whole face is collapsed back. And here's a teenager with the exact same thing, a mouth breather and a flat nasal sinus area, very poor posture, both of them have very poor posture, and his whole lower jaw is too far back. And at this stage, for him, surgery is the only answer. So he was going to have upper and lower jaw surgery to bring the whole upper and lower jaw forward. So poor posture doesn't just go away. I see adults
Mm-hmm.
Just go to the grocery store
Wow. Yeah.
and see how many people have poor posture. Here's a woman that always sits with her head off to the side. And I was at a meeting and just looked around the room and looked at all of the poor posture. There's actually one person sitting up straight. This person is pretty good. But everybody else has poor posture in the whole room. It's like it's so difficult. And poor posture can actually be developed just by the way that you sleep. So
Yeah.
if you're a stomach sleeper, and especially if you have hands up under your face or under the pillow under your face, you're going to create a dysfunctional looking face. One side
Mm-hmm.
might be flatter than the other, and one whole side of the face might be longer and flatter. And then the shoulders develop incorrectly, the neck muscles are developing incorrectly. And here's a baby who has the knees up and the feet crossed and always on the stomach. And that pressure is tremendous on the developing face. So if you can see it here, it's very dark, but the whole upper arch is not matching the lower arch. It's inside and back just because of something like this hand pushing on it every night for 8 to 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So posture is important. There is good posture, and this is incorrect posture that we see
Okay.
all the time. The head is forward, the shoulders, and I can't think of the muscle I want to say. Well, Barbara's got a block right at the moment, but our not our shoulders, but our help. Okay, well, Barbara has a block. And then they develop a lordosis of the back also. So their stomach sticks out more than it
Yeah.
should. So this is an interesting picture that it's called the heavy headed because when you have really good posture, the weight on your body of your head is 0 pounds. But as soon as you have forward head posture, now on your spine, your head
Okay.
weighs 20 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And many patients that I see have very poor posture.
Wow.
And now the weight on your spine is 40 pounds. So
Okay.
that is a very uh, serious situation. And to correct that posture is difficult. Many times it takes some help along with the exercises that we do. We do posture exercises, but we sometimes need help from someone like a cranial osteopath or a chiropractor uh,
Yeah.
to help them to reorganize their bones and their muscles to have good posture. So here's a before and after face. So this, what I don't like about this before and after, it still shows that her mouth is open,
Huh.
which if
Yeah.
it's been corrected orthodontically, her face is better. But if she continues to sit with her mouth open, it's going to relapse back to more like this position. So it's very important that they're doing everything correctly, not just one thing like orthodontics. It's very important that their posture is correct, that their tongue is correct, and that they don't have bad habits that can contribute to that problem.
Wow.
The other thing that they can have is poor speech patterns. So many children are in school speech therapy, but unfortunately, speech pathologists are well trained, but they are never trained in myofunctional therapy. So they're trying to correct a speech problem around muscles that are not working correctly.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I get kids who have been in speech 8 years, and some of them
Wow.
are in private speech therapy as well as school speech therapy. So if you see the tongue all the time, you shouldn't see the tongue at all when you're talking, except for a TH sound. The TH sound is made with the tip of the tongue vibrating on the edge of the upper front teeth. The, then. So we don't hear the vibration unless we slow the sound down.
Yeah.
But that's the only sound that you should ever see the tongue come forward. But instead, we see a lot of tongues here doing the S sound or the L sound in particular. And look at this facial grimace that she does every time that she's talking. That shouldn't be, like this shouldn't be. And a lot of times they drool when they talk, or they shift their jaw to the side when they're talking. So none of this should be happening. And notice this child now has a short upper lip and a prominent chin that's
Yeah.
overactive, as well as the lip being overactive.
Wow.
So a lot of these patients, unfortunately, end up with sleep apnea. And so when we have that, it's just the fact that the muscles are not working correctly. The other concerns that they can have are orthodontic concerns. So
Yeah.
here is a tight frenum. This is
Okay.
only about a quarter of the size that it should be. And notice how the back of the tongue is now being totally pulled down. So the sides of the tongue have to flare outward. And he already has, or they already have, it might be a she, too narrow of an arch. The arch is developing very narrow, and the tongue is very wide because of it being held down and not being used correctly. So they often have these narrow arches where the upper teeth can be inside
Yeah.
the lower teeth. That's what I had, where my upper teeth were inside of the lower teeth. And nobody fixed it because back then
Yeah.
I was raised in a small town in the country, and we didn't even have an orthodontist. So it's very much of a prevalent thing now that orthodontics are available.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of orthodontists, but I still see the bite being made too left too,
Yeah.
and so they need expansion, and there's all different kinds of expansion appliances, but they need to get that arch wider so that the teeth can all fit. Now, the other thing, and please, if you're a parent, realize that no permanent teeth should be extracted. Sometimes baby teeth need to be extracted to allow the permanent teeth to come in.
Okay.
Like this arch is too small for all
Uh-huh.
permanent teeth to come in.
Wow.
So if someone doesn't widen the arch,
Mm-hmm.
they bite is still too small. So what do? They pull out 4 bicuspids.
Wow.
Don't let an orthodontist do that to your
Yep.
child. Ever,
Mm-hmm.
ever, I'm sorry. It is not necessary. You make the mouth bigger and make all of the teeth fit. And even wisdom teeth are important. And so it's important that we have wisdom teeth. I learned this at a seminar that I went to, that a research project was done in the Midwest, and they found out that the wisdom teeth are there to prevent concussions. And isn't that interesting? And here we are just automatically taking out wisdom teeth on kids with the braces. And instead, they should be making the mouth big enough for them to fit. These are just other appliances. This is Invisalign. Here is an appliance called an ELF appliance. This is a Crozat type of appliance. These are my favorites. And then there's a variety of other type of things. This is a face pull headgear to make the whole face more forward and bigger. And I think we got to the last picture. No, the last picture shows something you also don't want, are tongue traps. A lot of orthodontists will put a tongue trap in the mouth to stop the tongue from coming forward. It does not retrain the tongue, and it is not helpful. So don't spend your money on it. Spend your money on myofunctional therapy to help make the mouth bigger. So there you are, our presentation for today.
Beautiful. As always, you are so thorough. You got this down. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
And Barbara, remind us how we can reach out to you, please.
Yes, www.tonguethrust.com. Everything is on there. My phone number, my address, information about myofunctional therapy, videos. So, yes.
Thank you.
So,
we appreciate your time here as always, and looking forward to the next time we get to connect. Thanks so much.
I appreciate it.
Same
Bye.
here. Thank you. Bye-bye. We'll talk next week. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.